Millionaire hires a fake date for his ex's engagement party, but she steals the show. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The city was soaked in rain, the streets glistening under the glow of traffic lights. Inside a quiet café, a young woman named Maya sat by the window. Her thin coat did little to block the chill seeping through the glass. In front of her was a notebook filled with sketches, dreams of one day opening her own art studio for children in her neighborhood. But dreams did not pay rent, and the landlord had already given her a final warning. Her mother's hospital bills were stacking higher by the day. The pressure pressed down on her chest like a heavy stone. She pushed the notebook aside and picked up the small cup of coffee she could barely afford when the sound of footsteps approached her table. She looked up and saw a man tall, sharply dressed, his dark hair neatly combed back, the confidence in his stance cutting through the room. His eyes, however, carried something else, something colder. He was not the kind of man who asked permission. He simply sat down across from her. "You need money, do you not?" His voice was even deliberate, almost businesslike. Maya stiffened. "Excuse me?" The man folded his hands on the table. "My name is Alexander Carter. You may have heard of me." She had not, but she nodded anyway, uneasy. He leaned in closer. "I have a proposition for you. I want you to accompany me to an engagement party. Play the role of my partner. Nothing more, nothing less." Maya blinked, trying to process his words over the patter of rain outside. "An engagement party? For who?" "For my ex-fiancée," he said simply. "She is marrying someone else, and I cannot walk in there alone. I need someone on my arm, someone unexpected." He studied her worn jacket, her tired eyes, her simple grace. "You will do." Her pulse quickened, a mix of fear and disbelief. "Why me? You do not even know me." "That is exactly why," Alexander replied without hesitation. "You are not from my world. You are not part of the schemes or the whispers. You will be believable." And in exchange, he slid a folded check across the table, the zeros making her breath catch. "You will have enough to pay your debts and your mother's bills as well." Maya's throat went dry. She stared at the paper, then back at him. The calf noise seemed to fade into silence. "This is insane," she whispered. He tilted his head. "Perhaps, but so is drowning in obligations when someone offers you a lifeline. You need the money. I need the appearance. It is nothing personal, only business. Think of it as a contract." Maya's fingers hovered over the check. Every part of her screamed to walk away, to not get entangled in whatever game this stranger was playing. Yet the weight of her reality pressed harder. Rent overdue, hospital bills piling up, no one else to turn to. Her lips trembled as she finally whispered, "What exactly would I have to do?" Alexander's eyes softened just slightly, though his tone remained steady. "5 events. You stand beside me, smile when the cameras flash. Play the part of a woman who belongs in my world. After that, our arrangement ends. No questions, no entanglements. A clean exit for both of us." The rain tapped harder against the glass, as though urging her toward a decision. Maya looked at the check again, then at her own reflection in the café. Window, tired, worn, but not broken. She took a slow breath. "All right," she said finally, her voice shaking but firm. "I will do it." A faint smile curved at the corner of his lips, the kind that gave nothing away. He rose to his feet, extending his hand across the table. "Good. Then let us begin." As Maya placed her hand in his, a chill ran through her spine. She had no idea that this reckless agreement, signed with desperation on a rainy night, would change everything she thought she knew about love, pride, and the price of dignity. The following morning, Maya woke to the sound of her alarm, the gray light of dawn slipping through the thin curtains of her small apartment. She had barely slept. The memory of the night before played in her mind like a film she could not pause. The man, the offer, the check that still lay folded inside her notebook. It all felt unreal, as though she had dreamed it. Yet when she reached for the notebook, The paper was still there, heavy with promises and chains at the same time. Her phone buzzed with a message. Unknown number. She hesitated before opening it. 7 o'clock sharp, Brooks Hotel. Wear the dress. Driver will arrive at 6. No greeting, no name, just instructions. She knew who it was. Her chest tightened as she stared around her room. The peeling paint, the stacked sketchbooks, the pile of unpaid bills on the counter. Her mother's hospital bracelet glimmered faintly in a cup by the sink, a reminder of why she had agreed. She whispered to herself, "It is only 5 nights. Only a contract." When the clock struck 6, a black car pulled up outside her building. Neighbors peeked through curtains as Maya stepped out, carrying only a small bag. The driver opened the door without a word. Inside, the leather seats smelled of wealth she had never touched. She sat stiffly, clutching the fabric of her coat. The car stopped in front of a boutique she had never dared to enter. Inside, racks of gowns glistened beneath soft golden lights. Alexander was already there, his presence commanding the room. He held a tablet in one hand, scrolling through messages, barely glancing up as she walked in. "You are late," he said. "It is 6:15, Maya replied, trying to steady her voice. 15 minutes late is still late, Alexander said flatly, then gestured toward a row of dresses. "Pick one. You will need to look the part." Maya touched the gowns with trembling fingers. The silk, the sequins, the weight of luxury she had never imagined. An attendant appeared with shoes, accessories, and a sharp smile. Within minutes, Maya found herself in a changing room, staring at her reflection in a mirror framed with gold. The woman looking back at her seemed like a stranger. When she stepped out, Alexander finally lifted his eyes. For the first time, his gaze lingered. The black gown fit her like it had been made for her, the soft neckline brushing her collarbone, the skirt flowing like liquid around her ankles. She felt exposed under his inspection, her cheeks burning. "Acceptable," he said at last, though his tone carried something less certain. The attendant clipped a diamond necklace around her throat, its cold weight startling her. "Do not lose this," Alexander said. "It costs more than your building." Maya's jaw tightened, but she bit back her words. She reminded herself of the contract, the hospital bills, the chance to breathe for once. Later that evening, they sat together in the back of the car as it rolled toward the Brooks Hotel, where the engagement party would be held. The city lights flickered past the windows, the hum of traffic filling the silence. Maya smoothed the fabric of her gown nervously. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked quietly. Alexander turned his head, his profile lit by passing neon. "Because appearances matter. My ex will be there, surrounded by people who once doubted me. I cannot show weakness." Maya studied him. Beneath the arrogance, there was a trace of something else. Not pride, not vanity, pain perhaps. She did not push further. When they arrived, the hotel glowed like a palace. Cameras flashed outside as socialites and investors stepped onto the red carpet. Alexander offered his arm. She hesitated, then placed her hand lightly on his sleeve. The moment they stepped out, the crowd turned. Whispers rippled like waves. Maya held her head high, though her knees threatened to give way. The reporters shouted questions, their flashes like lightning. "Who is she, Alex? Your new fiancé? Is this serious or another one of your games?" Alexander did not flinch. His arm tightened slightly beneath her hand as he guided her forward. "Smile," he murmured. So she did. Not because she belonged there, but because for one night she would not let them see her fear. Inside the ballroom, chandeliers dripped with crystal, and music floated from a live orchestra. The air smelled of roses and champagne. Maya felt every gaze press against her as they entered, but she forced herself to breathe. At the far end of the room, a woman in a silver gown turned. Her beauty was sharp, practiced, her smile edged like glass. She was the fiancée, the one who had once held Alexander's heart. And now, she was watching Maya with narrowed eyes. The game had begun. The ballroom shimmered with light, every chandelier scattering diamonds across polished marble floors. Maya felt the weight of stares, 1,000 silent judgments clinging to her gown like a second skin. She held Alexander's arm tighter, her fingers trembling slightly, though her smile stayed fixed. At the center of the room, Sophia approached. The woman was breathtaking, her silver gown catching every flicker of light. But her eyes were cold and calculating. She leaned in just close enough to kiss the air beside Alexander's cheek. "Alexander," she said, her tones sweet but sharp. "You did not tell me you were bringing company." Maya's heart thumped painfully. She wanted to shrink, to disappear, but Alexander's voice came firm, steady. "Sophia, this is Maya, my partner." Sophia's gaze swept over Maya from head to toe, pausing on the diamond necklace at her throat. Her painted lips curled. "Partner? How convenient. I suppose everyone needs a date when pride is at stake." A ripple of quiet laughter circled among the guests nearby. Maya's cheeks burned, but she lifted her chin. Before she could speak, a waiter stumbled behind her, champagne flutes tipping. Cold liquid splashed across her gown, golden drops glinting under the lights. Gasps rose from the crowd. Maya froze, mortified. But then, something steadied in her chest. She forced a laugh, light and easy. "Well," she said, dabbing at her gown with a napkin, "at least champagne is more fashionable than water. I will call it my new perfume." The crowd chuckled. Even a few raised their glasses in approval. The tension thinned, and Maya breathed again. She caught Alexander's eyes on her, a flicker of surprise softening his usual mask. Sophia, however, narrowed her eyes. "Charming," she said with clipped sweetness. "I see you are full of surprises." The evening pressed forward with speeches, music, and clinking glasses. Maya stayed close to Alexander, her every movement deliberate, careful, but inside, her nerves pulsed. She felt like an actress in a role too big for her. When the string quartet paused for intermission, Alexander guided her toward a quieter balcony. The night air was cool, brushing her skin, a relief after the heat of so many eyes. "You handled yourself well," Alexander said, his voice lower now, almost private. Maya turned, startled. "You sound surprised." "I am," he admitted. "Most people would have panicked. You turned it into a performance." She laughed softly, a touch bitter. "When you have been humiliated enough times in life, you learn to smile through it. People only remember how you finish, not how you stumble." For a moment, silence stretched between them. The city glittered beyond the balcony, alive and endless. Alexander studied her, his gaze searching. "Why did she leave you?" Maya asked suddenly, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Alexander's jaw tightened. His eyes shifted to the skyline. "Because at the time, I had nothing. No empire, no fortune. I was just a man with ambition. She decided ambition was not enough. She wanted certainty, not risk." His voice thinned with bitterness. "She found another man with old money, and I was discarded." Maya looked at him, the arrogance in his posture now edged with something raw. "So this is revenge," she said quietly. He met her eyes. "This is survival. In my world you cannot show weakness, not even once." The orchestra swelled again inside, drawing them back to the crowd. As they re-entered the ballroom, Maya felt the change. She was no longer only pretending. She was starting to see the cracks in his armor, the man beneath the mask of wealth. Sophia's voice rang across the room, pulling attention once more. She raised her glass. "To old flames and new beginnings," she announced. Her smile did not reach her eyes. Alexander lifted his own glass, his arm brushing against Maya's. "To knowing who truly matters," he said. The toast echoed through the hall, glasses clinking like crystal thunder. And in that moment, though bound by nothing but a paper contract, Maya felt the faint stir of something dangerous, something real beneath the glittering facade. The night of the engagement party ended with applause, music, and the faint bitterness of Sophia's mocking smile still lingering in the air. Maya returned home in the sleek black car, the borrowed gown folded neatly on her lap, the diamond necklace already taken back by the attendant. She watched the city blur past the window, her thoughts tangled. She had walked into a storm meant to humiliate her, yet she had survived. More than survived, she had stolen the attention that was never meant to be hers. The next morning, Maya stood in front of her cracked bathroom mirror, rinsing her face with cold water. Her phone buzzed again, another message from Alexander. 2 days. Charity gala. Prepare. She sighed, gripping the sink. This was her new life now, a role she had agreed to play. She repeated to herself that it was only a contract, only business, nothing more. 2 evenings later, the car returned. This time it did not take her to a boutique, but to Alexander's private penthouse. The elevator doors opened to a view that stole her breath. Glass walls stretched across the skyline, the city glittering beneath like a sea of stars. Every piece of furniture gleamed with polished steel and leather. But the space felt cold, untouched, more like a showroom than a home. Alexander waited near a long table set with documents. His assistant, a poised woman named Claire, stood beside him, tablet in hand. "We need to establish guidelines," Alexander said without looking up. Maya's stomach tightened. "Guidelines?" He pushed a sheet of paper toward her. "Rules of the contract. You will attend 5 events with me. You will not speak to the press outside of my presence. You will not attempt to contact me outside of the agreed schedule. There will be no romantic involvement." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Finally she said, "You really think everything can be written down, measured, signed like a business deal?" Alexander's eyes flickered toward her, steady, unyielding. "In my world, everything must be. Without rules, everything falls apart." Maya stared at the list of rules, the black ink like iron bars on paper. Slowly she picked up the pen. "Fine, but I want one rule of my own." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "And what is that?" She met his gaze, her voice firmer than she felt. "That when this ends, you will let me walk away with dignity. No games, no headlines, no unfinished debts. When the 5th event is over, I am free." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he gave a single nod. "Agreed." Claire took the signed paper and slipped it into a folder. "We will begin preparations immediately. Maya, you will need training." The days that followed blurred into a whirlwind of transformation. A stylist trimmed her hair and taught her how to move gracefully in heels. A speech coach rehearsed greetings and dinner etiquette with her until she could recite them without hesitation. At first, Maya stumbled, nearly tripping over her own shoes, fumbling with wine glasses, mispronouncing designer names. She laughed nervously at her mistakes, cheeks burning under the watchful eyes of tutors. Yet gradually, something shifted. Her steps steadied. Her smile came easier. She began to glide instead of stumble, to answer questions without shrinking into herself. The girl who once hid in sketchbooks and second-hand clothes was learning to stand tall in the glare of chandeliers. Alexander watched from a distance. He rarely commented, but once, when Maya misbuttoned her gown in a flurry of nerves, he almost smiled. "Confidence suits you better than fear," he said quietly. One evening, after hours of training, Maya lingered by the penthouse balcony, staring at the glowing city below. Alexander approached, silent at first. Then, without looking at her, he said, "You are doing well, better than I expected." She let out a soft laugh. "Do I hear a compliment from Alexander Carter?" "Do not get used to it," he replied, though his tone was less sharp than usual. They stood together in the silence, the air heavy with something unspoken. For the first time, Maya felt the walls around him shift, not crumbling yet, but bending just slightly. The following night, as the driver opened the door for her once again, Maya caught her reflection in the car window. The gown, the hair, the diamond earrings, they belonged to someone else. Someone she was pretending to be. And yet, deep inside, she wondered if she was slowly becoming that woman. As the car pulled into the bright entrance of the charity gala, cameras flashing, she drew a deep breath. Another stage, another test. The contract was clear, but her heart no longer felt as certain. Something dangerous was beginning to stir beneath the careful rules they had signed. The gala pulsed with glittering light and music. Chandeliers spilled golden fire across the vast hall, where gowns shimmered and tuxedos gleamed like polished armor. Maya clutched her small evening bag as Alexander guided her through the crowd. Cameras snapped, voices buzzed, and yet every glance seemed to settle on them. She told herself to breathe, to remember every step she had rehearsed. At first, it went as planned. Maya smiled when introduced, answered polite questions with grace, and even charmed a senator's wife with a quick remark about the absurdly tall floral arrangements. She could feel Alexander's arm steady beneath her hand, his nod of approval subtle but present. But then, as the string quartet began a waltz, trouble arrived. A journalist, emboldened by champagne, stepped forward with a smirk. "Mr. Carter," he called, his voice loud enough to draw eyes. "Care to tell us about your new companion?" She is a remarkable beauty. How long have you two been involved? Maya's throat tightened. The rules echoed in her mind. Say nothing outside his presence. She glanced at Alexander. His expression was calm, unreadable, but he gave her no signal. The silence stretched like a rope about to snap. So she smiled. Long enough to know he never dances, she said lightly. Laughter bubbled among the onlookers. She tilted her head at Alexander. But perhaps tonight is different? It was bold, reckless even. But Alexander extended his hand without hesitation. The crowd parted, surprised. As the orchestra swelled, he led her onto the floor. Maya's pulse thundered as his hand rested at her back, his other hand clasping hers firmly. She had no training for this part, no rehearsed steps, but Alexander guided her smoothly. Their movements found rhythm, slow at first, then flowing as though they had practiced for years. The whispers shifted. Instead of doubt, there was admiration. People watched them not as a staged pair, but as something real. Maya's cheeks burned, not from embarrassment but from the intensity in Alexander's eyes. For once, he was not the unshakable CEO. He was a man, holding her as though the world had faded away. When the song ended, applause swept the room. Maya exhaled shakily, but Alexander did not release her hand immediately. For a fleeting second, it felt less like performance and more like confession. Later, as they stepped onto a quieter terrace to escape the press of voices, Maya leaned against the railing, her gown catching the moonlight. "You broke your own rule," she murmured. Alexander's brow furrowed. "Which one?" "No romance, no entanglements." She looked at him, her eyes steady, though her heart trembled. For a moment he said nothing. The city glowed below, endless and cold. Finally, his voice softened. "Rules are easier to write than to keep." Maya's chest tightened. She wanted to remind herself this was only a contract, only 5 nights. But the memory of the dance lingered on her skin. She saw the same conflict flicker across his face before he turned away. Inside, the gala continued. Sophia's voice floated across the hall, sharp and mocking. "Interesting choice, Alexander. She cleans up well, but everyone knows fairy tales do not last." Maya clenched her fists, but Alexander's hand touched her arm gently, steadying her. He leaned close enough for only her to hear. "Ignore her. You handled yourself better than most would have." Maya swallowed hard, torn between gratitude and fear. She had entered this world for money, for survival. But tonight had blurred the lines. Beneath the diamonds and contracts, something unplanned, something dangerous, was growing between them. And for the first time, Maya wondered if walking away at the end would truly be possible. The gala ended long after midnight. The driver took them back to the penthouse in silence, the hum of the engine filling the empty space between them. Maya sat with her hands folded in her lap, staring out at the blur of headlights, trying to steady her racing thoughts. The dance still played in her memory, the warmth of his hand, the way the crowd had disappeared, the rare softness in Alexander's eyes. She reminded herself of the contract, but her heart refused to listen. When they arrived, Alexander dismissed his assistant and staff. For the first time, Maya found herself alone with him in the cavernous penthouse. The city glittered beyond the glass walls, but inside, the space was quiet, almost hollow. He poured himself a drink and stood by the window. "You surprised me tonight," he said at last, his voice low. Maya turned toward him. "How so?" "You took control when I did not. You turned the attention in our favor. I am not accustomed to anyone doing that for me." He set the glass down untouched. "You were not supposed to matter this much." His honesty startled her. She crossed her arms, suddenly unsure of her footing. "And yet I do?" Alexander looked at her then, his usual armor slipping. "You do." Silence stretched, heavy with unspoken truths. Maya felt her chest tighten. She wanted to step back, to remind him of the rules, but instead she found herself stepping closer. "Why are you really doing all this?" she asked softly. "It cannot only be about appearances. It feels like something more." He exhaled, almost a laugh, but not quite. "Because I built everything from nothing. Every person in that ballroom once doubted me. Sophia chose someone else because she thought I would fail. I swore I would never be humiliated again. But standing there tonight, with you," his voice faltered, I did not feel like a man proving himself. I felt like a man who had already won. Maya's breath caught. She could see it now, the crack in his pride, the loneliness hidden beneath the empire. He was a man still haunted by betrayal, still afraid of being loved for the wrong reasons. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The distance between them was measured in inches, not feet. Then Alexander stepped back abruptly, his mask sliding back into place. "Go rest," he said, his voice sharper now. "We have another event tomorrow." Maya nodded, though her heart ached. She retreated to the guest room, her reflection in the mirror showing a woman torn between dignity and desire. As she slipped out of the gown and into her plain clothes, she whispered to herself, 5 nights, only 5 nights. But even as she said it, she knew the line had already begun to blur. And somewhere in the city below, Sophia's laughter echoed in her memory, a chilling reminder that the game was far from over. Morning broke with a pale light stretching across the skyline. Maya awoke to the quiet of the penthouse, a silence so complete it pressed against her ears. She moved to the kitchen and found Alexander already there, suit pressed, coffee untouched in front of him. His phone buzzed with messages, but his eyes stayed fixed on the screen in a way that seemed more troubled than busy. "What is it?" she asked cautiously. He lifted his gaze, and for the first time she saw something like unease in his expression. He turned the phone toward her. A headline flashed across the screen. "Alexander Carter's new love. Just another business transaction?" Below the headline were photographs of her from the gala, her smile frozen mid-laugh, the champagne spill replayed in captions as if it were part of a stage performance. And worse, there was a blurred image of a contract, half visible but damning. Maya's stomach twisted. "They know," she whispered. "Someone leaked it," Alexander said, his tone clipped. "Sophia has powerful friends. She would stop at nothing to embarrass me." Maya's hands shook as she held the phone. "So what happens to me now? My name, my face, it is all out there. People will think I sold myself." Alexander's jaw clenched. "I will contain it." "Contain it?" Her voice rose, trembling. "This is my life, my job, my mother, everything. If people believe this, I lose all of it." "Do you even realize what you have done to me?" The sharpness in her voice cut through him. For a moment, Alexander looked like he might argue, but then he said nothing. Silence filled the room, heavier than words. Maya stepped back, her chest heaving. "This was supposed to end with dignity. That was my rule, and you have broken it." Her eyes burned, but she refused to let the tears fall. She turned toward the door. "I cannot do this anymore." Alexander's voice came, low but urgent. "Maya!" She stopped, her back still to him. "You wanted a woman to stand beside you as a shield. But I am not a shield, Alexander. I am a person, and I cannot be part of your war against Sophia anymore." The elevator doors closed behind her, leaving Alexander in the vast, silent penthouse. He stood unmoving, staring at the coffee cup that had gone cold. For the first time in years, he realized he had built an empire of glass, and with one truth exposed, every piece was beginning to crack. Outside, as Maya stepped onto the busy street, the weight of cameras and whispers already seemed to follow her. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself, her heart aching with betrayal. And yet, beneath the hurt, another voice whispered quietly. What if the feelings had been real, after all? The storm broke fully the next day. Newspapers, gossip blogs, and even financial columns exploded with the story. Headlines screamed about Alexander Carter's contract romance, and Maya's photograph appeared beside his in every feed, her face branded as an actress in a game she had never agreed to play. The whispers outside her apartment turned into pointed stares. A neighbor avoided her eyes. The manager of the café where she worked part-time told her not to come back until things calmed down. Maya sat on the edge of her small bed, clutching her sketchbook, trying to draw as she always did when the world felt too heavy. But her hands shook, the lines splintering across the page. She whispered, "This is not who I am. I never wanted this." Meanwhile, in his glass tower office, Alexander faced the board. The room brimmed with tension, directors whispering about scandal and stockholders' trust. One man slammed the leaked image of the contract on the table. "You have embarrassed us all. This is not leadership, Carter. This is weakness." Alexander's jaw tightened. He had spent years proving himself, clawing from nothing to build an empire, and now the empire was slipping because he let one woman break through his walls. He could hear Sophia's voice echo in the back of his mind, mocking, triumphant. But when he closed his eyes, it was not Sophia he saw. It was Maya standing in the ballroom, turning humiliation into laughter, dancing with him as though the world belonged only to them. That night, he made his choice. At a press conference packed with flashing cameras, Alexander stood tall behind the podium. The murmurs filled the air like restless waves, waiting to devour him. He cleared his throat, his voice steady but stripped of arrogance. "Yes," he said, his words slicing through the room. "The contract was real. I asked Maya to stand beside me, to play a part in my world. But what the headlines do not tell you is that she gave me more than I deserved. She gave me dignity when others tried to humiliate me. She gave me truth when I was drowning in lies. And the truth is, I do not want a contract anymore. I want her." Gasps rippled through the press. Questions erupted, but Alexander raised a hand. "You can mock me, you can doubt me, you can strip me of every title I have earned, but understand this, I will not let go of her. Not for money, not for power, not for pride. She is not my shield. She is the only person who ever saw me as more than a fortune. And if that makes me weak, then I will choose weakness." The room erupted in flashes. Across the city, in her small apartment, Maya watched the broadcast on a flickering television screen. Her hand flew to her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. He had broken every rule, every wall, every lie. For once, Alexander Carter was not hiding behind contracts or diamonds. He was standing bare before the world. Maya's heart ached with fear and hope tangled together. For the first time, she believed his words, and she knew she had a choice to make. The night after the press conference, the city buzzed with speculation. Commentators dissected every word Alexander had spoken, some calling him reckless, others calling him bold. But none of that mattered to Maya as she stood outside the gallery where children's art lined the walls. She had been preparing this small exhibition for months, a quiet dream tucked between endless shifts and unpaid bills. She never expected anyone important to notice. When the doors opened, she froze. Alexander was there. Not in his tailored armor of suits and ties, but in something far simpler. No entourage, no board members, no cameras, just him. "Maya," he said, his voice softer than she had ever heard. "I know I broke every promise. I dragged you into my battles when all you ever wanted was dignity. But tonight I am not here with contracts or apologies. I am here because you are the only person who made me feel like myself again." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "Why would you risk everything for me?" "Because everything I built means nothing if I have to stand in it alone," he replied. He reached into his pocket and drew out a small velvet box. Inside lay a ring, simple but shining with sincerity. This time no contracts, no conditions, just truth. "Will you marry me, Maya?" The room went still. Children peeked from behind their paintings, staff and guests held their breath. Maya's heart pounded as she looked at him. This man who had once been nothing but pride and walls, now standing bare with only hope in his eyes. Slowly, she nodded. "Yes, but only if you promise to never hide behind rules again." His smile broke, genuine and unguarded. "I promise." Applause erupted as Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger. The sketchbook she had carried for years lay open nearby, and for the first time she saw her dream coming to life, not just in paint and paper, but in love that was real. They married quietly weeks later, in the same gallery, surrounded not by diamonds and chandeliers, but by art and laughter. No longer a contract, no longer a performance, only a beginning. And as Maya whispered, "The best mistake we ever made," Alexander kissed her, sealing not a deal but a forever.